So in today's video, we're going to be doing a lot of reading. We're going to be doing a lot of hypothesizing. We're going to be doing a lot of dispelling as well as some thinking, because today we are talking about the Edmonton Oilers and the idea that's been floating around over the past few days of Evander Kane and whether or not there's some sort of a rift between him and the rest of the locker room. Now, if you don't know where exactly this is coming from, well, we had ourselves a Twitter video of the entire thing. This was posted by Jacob on Twitter. It highlights a clip from the recent episode of the Got Your Back podcast on Evander Kane, and the entire video will be linked in the description if you want to listen to it yourself. What I did was I transcribed the entire segment here. It's a 59-second audio hit. The podcast is, of course, the product of Rishaug and Strudwick. If you're familiar with Edmonton beat reporters, you're probably familiar with the entire scene they've got over there. But this podcast clip kind of had a lot of people thinking, okay, what's really going on here with the Oilers? And what I did was I transcribed what it was that was said. Here's the comment that was made on this podcast. The problem that when it's Evander Kane out there, we've seen that Evander Kane has not been happy when he's been on the third line, and he's talked about it and demonstrated it. But I agree with you. I don't think there's a chemistry between him and Leon right now. I know that you watch a lot of body language and you watch the bench a lot, and there was a very animated conversation 2 games ago between Kane and Leon on the bench, and all of a sudden, next game, they weren't playing together, so it's funny. I listened to the game, and Knoblauch talked about some frustration and some negativity has creeped in, and the team's not playing as well, but it's creeped into their dressing room and into their bench. Because of the stretch they're on right now, there's a lot more question marks today than there was 3 weeks ago. A lot more question marks with the Oilers. And understandably so, this kind of set off a lot of Oilers fans' spidey senses. Wait a minute, okay, yeah, the Oilers have not been playing as well since they were on that 16-game winning streak. They've been losing a few games here and there. There's some frustration, and now we're talking about Evander Kane and Leon Draisaitl potentially not really liking each other? What's going on here? There was an article published on the Hockey Writers that put this out there even further. Rupert McDonald made this post yesterday, Evander Kane reportedly causing a rift in the Oilers dressing room, and in the piece they cite the same podcast wherein this was talked about. On at least 2 occasions, Kane has gone public about his frustration with the lack of ice time. While players always want to play more, it's something few go public with, especially when playing on a team with Stanley Cup aspirations like the Oilers have. It appears that there have been more issues than what the public has picked up on. As well, you have one of the team's biggest insiders now reporting that a rift is growing within the room. Rob Brown, who serves as an Oilers analyst on 630 CHED, is also a part of the Got Your Back podcast with TSN's Ryan Rishaug and former NHLer Jason Strudwick. The three had some great topics of discussion on the episode that aired Sunday, with the most interesting part being about Kane. According to Brown, some issues have been arising as of late. Then you have the comments that we had just talked about. The article then mentions towards the end that, as Brown mentioned, Kane hasn't particularly shown great chemistry with Draisaitl, which has resulted in both Knoblauch and former head coach Jay Woodcroft placing him on the third line at times. For some players, that wouldn't be a major issue, but the 32-year-old has publicly displayed his frustration when it comes to being in that role. In order to win a Stanley Cup, everyone needs to be brought into a team-first mentality, and based on this report along with some of the other public comments, it seems that Kane may not be entirely bought into a team-first approach right now. So this article got a lot of people kind of freaking out a little bit, and I will say that part of it is because this is Evander Kane in the first place that's being talked about in this context. Like, because Evander Kane has already had somewhat of a history of problematic behavior in the past, there's already this idea that, oh yeah, things can go wrong at any moment with the Edmonton Oilers. All it takes is a few comments and a few podcasts that go out there and talk about it, because realistically, I mean, we know that Evander Kane can be a fiery guy. We know that Leon Draisaitl can be pissy at times. So if these guys are shouting at each other on the bench and that's picked up on, and all of a sudden they're not playing in the same line, when one of the analysts on the radio goes out there on a podcast and talks about how that's an issue to him, how it is something worth noting that you have to think about, then it gets fans thinking about it. Plain and simple. But I will say, in order to dispute this entire idea, there was a second article published earlier today by Jim Parsons on NHL TradeTalk.com. Here's the truth behind the alleged Kane and Oilers dressing room turmoil. In a recent article, it was suggested there might be a rift between Kane and the rest of the Oilers, and a line from the piece says that more issues than what the public has picked up on, as well as one of the team's biggest insiders, is now reporting that a rift is going on within the dressing room. It's unfortunate if true, but this second article says that from the information I've gathered, the idea of a dressing room rift is not accurate. Now, the article then goes over the same podcast comments we had talked about 2 times already, and then it says this: digging into the matter more, we've learned the insinuation of any current rift was Rob Brown's comments being taken out of context. Is Kane less than thrilled to be on the third line? Probably. Is he causing issues in the locker room that should pose concerns moving forward? Highly unlikely. The best that I can divulge, this is Jim Parsons from the article writing, from a recent conversation with someone who can be trusted, is that Rob Brown's comments were not meant to suggest a behind-the-scenes problem. Like any team that wants to win, when losses pile up, players get irked. Even Leon Draisaitl, with whom it was rumored there was an issue, is known to get upset and show poor body language when things don't go his way. He's the first to admit it, and Draisaitl has publicly stated that he's working on it. And then there's a bigger discussion towards the end of the piece about the Oilers needing to find more consistency and how guys may not always mesh on the ice. You know, Evander Kane and Draisaitl not being in a position to form good habits together. That's not really like a bad thing per se. It's just a thing that happens. Like, we remember when Phil Kessel was playing with Crosby and Malkin, and he didn't really mesh all too well with those guys. Oddly enough, the best fit that he had was with Nick Bonino. Sometimes guys just don't fit. And this article goes out there and talks about how that is very much the case here. So, all in all, when it comes to the Evander Kane, Leon Draisaitl drama conversation that's been going on, it appears that this is not an issue. If you want to go out there and believe Jim Parsons and that he has one source close to the Oilers that said that it's not really an issue, then you're fine to believe that. If you wanted to believe instead that there is some sort of a thing going on because Rob Brown said on the Got Your Back podcast that there may be something to think about there, then okay, that's your prerogative. I'm just making this video and presenting the 2 points of views because I did think it was interesting enough to talk about. This did make the rounds on my social media feed, and the clip was also posted on Twitter as well. So if you wanted to get an extended look, then hey, I'll leave a link in the description, firstly to the Got Your Back pod clip, as well as both of the articles we had looked at. The first one from Rupert McDonald talking about how there could be a rift, and the second one from Jim Parsons saying, oh yeah, no, that's not right. So Oilers fans, I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as well. There is an Oilers game going on later today against the St. Louis Blues. In fact, it's one of the only games going on today, so all eyes are on you. But if you are an Oiler fan, what are your thoughts on this entire idea of Evander Kane and Leon Draisaitl potentially butting heads? There may have been a conversation on the bench that was angry between these two guys, but at the same time, I mean, that kind of stuff happens all the time. Like, I don't really think it's a bigger indicator as to an underlying problem with deeper roots that extend beyond just, oh, they disagreed on the play and they talked about it on the bench or they yelled about it on the bench. Like, this stuff happens. Even if you played like regular drop-in hockey at the community center, you get into arguments sometimes, especially when you've got guys who want to win, who are competitive, and who've got fiery personalities. So it's not really the most surprising thing to see guys argue about that, but to see it put in the way it was on the podcast, I can understand why there's some concern there. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, Oilers fans. What are your opinions about the entire idea of Evander Kane causing some sort of a rift in the locker room? What are your thoughts on the rebuttal? Do you think this actually is worth thinking about? Do you think it's not really a big deal? The comment section is your floor, so let me know. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.